The political and financial layers of the OSI model. It is a common joke that the 7-layer OSI network model actually has 9 layers, but there is truth to the joke. Financial and political considerations affect both business decisions and your career. Understanding these considerations can help your career. During my career, I worked in IT for large, high-tech corporations. How well this advice relates to you may depend on your work environment. If you are working in IT or computer science for a large corporation, then this should be useful. If you are working in a startup, it may be less useful. Your mileage may vary. One particular bit of experience was my time running the network for Apple product launches. I was the directly responsible individual, DRI, for the network for 42 Apple special events from 2005 through 2017. What is a directly responsible individual? They are directly responsible for success or failure. During the Steve Jobs era, Apple had no committees. One person was in charge of each business decision. They could have advisors and helpers, but decisions were not put to votes. The DRI had the authority to make the decision and was responsible for success or failure. No excuses. It did not matter why something failed. If it failed on the DRI's watch, the DRI was accountable. Of course, the DRI's management could decide whether to take action based on what was in the best interest of the company. Some people go through a career trying to avoid responsibility. I encourage you to strive to be responsible for something and to support people who accept responsibility. But you are already the DRI for one thing, your own career. You are responsible for the success or failure of your own career regardless of outside causes. Excuses are irrelevant. You need to step up and own your own career. Some people lean on their manager to guide their career, but your manager is DRI for their own career. Your manager might be an ally, but their goals are not your goals. You need to decide your own direction and then make it happen. Managers have their own problems. Their first job is to get stuff done for the company. Their second job is to hire and fire effectively. Yes, that sounds rough, but that is what managers are for. Managers have a finite budget for raises every year. It is often around 3.5%. Your manager may think you are awesome, but they cannot give you an above-average raise without giving someone else a below-average raise. I worked at one company where the CEO determined that 10% of all annual performance reviews would result in a performance improvement plan. Half of those would result in termination. Promotions are commonly available for 10% of employees each year. That means that 1 of every 20 employees is getting fired each year, and only 1 of every 10 employees is getting a promotion each year. Managers also need to assign individuals to teams during reorganizations. Some teams are more desirable than others, but the manager will assign engineers based on what is in the best interest of the company rather than your own best interests. HR is not your friend either. One of HR's main functions is to make sure that managers who discipline their employees do it with the proper paperwork to prevent lawsuits. HR may be helpful in the event of wrongdoing, such as sexual harassment, but if a manager decides you are a poor performer, HR will not dispute that opinion. You should be familiar with management hierarchy. Individual contributors such as engineers report to managers. Managers report to directors. Directors might report to senior directors or vice presidents. Large corporations may have extra layers, but it is helpful to understand this engineer, manager, director terminology. In particular, while managers write performance reviews and allocate raises, directors approve them. It is important that your director recognize you and know that you are a valuable contributor to the company. Most large corporations have 5 individual contributor grades. IT Engineer 1s are junior engineers. IT Engineer 5s are senior engineers. Most engineers are 3s and 4s. Companies do not want to hire junior engineers, so many new hires are made at the Engineer 3 or Engineer 4 level. Your goal in college should be to get enough skill and work experience to qualify for an Engineer 3 position. Another categorization is exempt versus non-exempt. Exempt means exempt from government hour and wage regulations. Non-exempt employees are usually hourly and must record their hours in a time card system. The government even mandates lunch hour and break schedules for non-exempt employees. Exempt employees are usually on a salary basis and generally do not record their hours. There are sometimes exceptions for contract positions. Very junior engineers, such as individual contributors 1s and 2s, may be non-exempt. Companies do not like hiring non-exempt people for engineer positions. This makes IT engineers 1s and 2s increasingly rare. This is another reason for you to gain sufficient experience to qualify as an engineer 3 for your first job. Loyalty versus job hopping. Let's do some math. If you start with the $100,000 salary and earn a 3.5% raise for 10 years, your salary will rise to $141,000. If you job hop twice, getting 15% raises each time rather than the 3.5% raise for that year, then your salary will rise to $174,000. I have a bachelor's degree in mathematics, so I say with confidence that $174,000 is greater than $141,000. Loyalty is a virtue, but when it comes to your career, you need to be loyal to yourself and your family. Earlier in your career, the average corporate annual raise of 3.5% is not enough. You work 2,000 hours during 1 year of work. You gain a ton of skills during those 2,000 hours. Your value to employers goes up by more than 3.5%. But it is hard to be rewarded financially for those skills without job hopping. Restricted stock is designed to improve loyalty. Each stock award typically vests over a 4-year period. Each year you work for the company, you vest 25% of the stock award. But the quantity of stock is usually a function of your salary, which is low early in your career as an engineer 3. When you job hop, you may lose unvested RSUs in your old job. But if you can increase your salary and job level, your new job will probably have a larger stock award. 1 to 2 years of experience as an individual contributor 3 is sufficient to be qualified as an individual contributor 4. But if only 10% of employees are being promoted internally each year, you may need to job hop to get an individual contributor 4 position as quickly as you deserve it. Job hopping too frequently looks bad on your resume. I advise staying with each company for about 2.5 years early in your career. That's long enough to master your job, be an asset to the company, and make contacts who will be helpful throughout your career. Make sure to use LinkedIn to connect with the coworkers who will vouch for you in the future. Then job hop and get the raise and higher level position you deserve. Your goal is to get up to individual contributor 5. Then you can begin staying at companies for longer periods to vest stock and possibly become a manager. Here's a calculation showing total compensation over time. This assumes that you start with a $100,000 base salary, receive a new RSU award equal to your salary every year, and receive a 20% bonus each year. In the first year, only one RSU award vests, so total compensation is only $145,000. But by the 4th year, 25% of each of the 4 prior RSU awards are vesting. This dramatically rewards you for staying with the company, which is the purpose of the RSUs. But junior and mid-level engineers probably will not receive this repeated level of stock awards. That is another reason to job hop to get to the individual contributor 5 level as quickly as you can. The hardest part of this whole process is getting your first job. Companies do not want to hire individual contributor 1s and 2s. You need enough experience to qualify for engineer 3. College classes are not sufficient. You need high-tech jobs during college that count as experience. Summer internships with high-tech companies are the best, but getting them is almost as hard as getting your first full-time high-tech job. Tutoring computer science classes can count. The best programmers are the ones who can teach programming. Your college has an IT organization. Get a job or intern with them. I completed 75 trouble tickets for my college IT organization as an unpaid intern. When I interviewed at Intel, I brought a printout summarizing the 75 tickets. IT managers want engineers who can support customers and solve trouble tickets. My printout helped me get the job. If you know iOS or Android programming, get an app into the App Store. It does not need to be a hit. It can have a small audience and even be free. But any app that passes app review and makes it into the App Store goes on your resume and counts as experience. It is rare to get a job from submitting a resume. During my whole career, I only got one high-tech job from a blind resume submission. Most of my jobs were from referrals. Hiring is a big risk for companies. In addition to technical skill, they want employees that are nice and easy to get along with. Grumpy people are poisonous to team morale. As a result, companies hire primarily from referrals. Companies pay bonuses to employees to refer candidates. This is not because companies are short candidates. It is because companies want candidates that are pleasant to work with. Be pleasant to your classmates. Demonstrate that you are both technically skilled and easy to get along with. Connect with skilled classmates on LinkedIn. A year from now, they may be working for a company that you want to apply to. They can refer you in and vouch for you. You may be able to do the same for them. One of the students in my software engineering group project was not helpful in the project. He had a full-time job for Intel, which took up most of his time. He failed to do his part of the software engineering project, and we needed to pull his weight. But he was grateful and referred me into Intel. That helped me get my first full-time high-tech job. I forgive him. Most companies have two job websites, public and internal. The public website allows you to apply with a resume that is evaluated by a computer and may get to a recruiter. The internal jobs website is only accessible to current employees of the company, but includes the name of the hiring manager. If you see a job you are interested in, check your LinkedIn to see if one of your contacts already works there. They can forward your resume and their positive recommendation directly to the hiring manager. That is how to get hired. I've never gotten a job from a career fair. They are useful because there are more companies hiring than you can possibly imagine. But most career fairs are staffed by recruiters. Recruiters do not make hiring decisions. They collect resumes, sort them by discipline, and pass the best resumes on to hiring managers. One exception is the Grace Hopper Celebration and Career Fair. This conference is specifically for women. As part of an effort to improve the percentage of women in high tech, many corporations send hiring managers to the Grace Hopper Conference. If you are female, this may be worth traveling to. Some scholarships are available. Job interviewing is a two-way street. The company wants to find out if you are right for the job. You need to find out if the company is right for you. Some managers are great. Some managers are awful. Even if a company is great, you could get a job at the company reporting to an awful manager. You need to determine that during the interview. The good news is you usually interview with both the manager and members of the team. The interview with team members is usually separate from the interview with the manager. The team interview is your opportunity to find out what working there is like. In IT, you need to find out about the on-call rotation. How frequently are you on call? What duration? When you are on call, how frequently do you get paged? Are you able to sleep through the night usually? I've worked in teams with reasonable on-call rotations. I also worked in a team where the on-call was so bad, I asked my manager to fix it or else I would resign. It is better to find this out during the interview. Change windows are another thing to ask about in IT. Some jobs only allow certain production changes during evenings or weekends. You must determine how often you will be expected to work evenings and weekends during the interview. The manager and the team may give you different answers to this question. Does the job require travel? Some people want to travel. Some people do not. In networking, you can join the retail team and see the world, or join the LAN team and stay home. Pick the team that makes you happy. What is the company's technical career path? How frequently do engineers get promoted? Most companies have individual contributor 5s, but if you are senior, you may want to know if it is possible to go beyond IC5 without becoming a manager. You may be offered restricted stock as part of your job offer. Should you expect similar RSU awards each year, or is this a one-time thing until you become IC5 or manager? Is there an annual bonus? What is the typical percentage? This is all information you should determine during your interview. Working in IT is a very interrupt-driven life. There are 4 primary components: tickets, on-call, executing changes, and projects. Trouble tickets are when a user reports a specific problem. You need to figure out the problem and solve it. Some tickets are higher priority than others. Some customers are higher priority than others. On-call is when there is a production problem sufficiently bad that an engineer needs to fix it immediately. Each IT team usually has a rotating on-call engineer. Some days this will be you. This means anytime, day or night, you may have to drop whatever you are doing and respond. I still remember watching the Tigger movie with my young daughter and being paged out due to a DDoS attack against my employer. IT teams need to do maintenance. This can include software upgrades, hardware upgrades, adding capacity, or re-implementations as part of larger projects. These changes are often performed after hours. You will also have a few projects. These are larger tasks where you try to improve the environment. You may need to execute many changes to implement your projects. The good news about changes and projects is they are proactive. You are planning and performing tasks to improve the environment. This is as opposed to tickets and on-call, which are entirely interrupt-driven and reactive. In IT, it is always a challenge gaining focus to work on projects between interrupts. Computer programming is less interrupt-driven than IT, but IT often provides a greater variety of smaller projects. Some people prefer programming, some people prefer IT. Congratulations, you got your first job. You are now, hopefully, an Engineer 3. Now what? First, plan on doing your first assignment for at least a year. The 2,000 hours of work you put in will drastically improve your skill level and demand in the job market. Your manager probably has a training and travel budget. Find a 1-week conference or training class you want to go to. Ask your manager if you can go. Your manager has the budget and will probably be happy you are working to improve your skill. But your manager is so busy, he will not search for conferences on your behalf. You have to do this on your own initiative. Your company has an internal job board. Keep an eye on it. If a job opens up that you are interested in, you will need to express interest. Remember, you are the DRI of your own career, not your manager. The perfect job for you could open up in another team, but your manager is not going to suggest it to you. And that job's hiring manager is forbidden from suggesting it to you. This is known as the do not approach rule. Managers and companies are not allowed to poach each other's staff. Internal transfers are allowed and even encouraged, but another manager is not allowed to approach you about a job without your manager's permission. That rarely happens. But once you have done at least 1 year in your role, you are allowed to search out other job opportunities in the company. If you see a job you are interested in, you have to approach that manager. If a manager position opens up and you want the job, nobody is going to suggest it. You have to ask for it. Because managers report to directors, if you're applying for a manager position, you will need to express your interest to the director. This is another reason it is important that the director know you exist and are an asset to the company. It is unlikely you will get a manager slot the first time you ask, but by asking, you let them know you are interested in management. It is likely the next time a junior manager position opens up, the director will already have you on the list to consider. That said, if you become aware another manager position is open, make sure you express your interest. Except for management positions, promotions are separate from positions. If you are an individual contributor 3 and you successfully transfer to a new role in the same company, you will likely still be an individual contributor 3. The most reliable way to advance to the next IC level is to switch employers. Let's review the job hierarchy again. Companies do not want to hire engineer 1s and engineer 2s. They are very rare. If you are lucky, you will have enough work experience during your college years to get a job as an individual contributor 3. Once you work for 5 years, possibly including 1 or 2 job hops, you will hopefully achieve individual contributor 5. Advancement beyond this level as an individual contributor is hard. Companies have very few IC6 positions. At this point, you need to decide whether you want to become a manager. Managers get paid more. It is very rare for an individual contributor to get paid more than the manager they report to. Managers have more impact. Rather than working on one person's worth of projects, managers supervise 5 to 10 people's worth of projects. Only managers become directors. Directors get paid much more than individual contributors. But being a manager has downsides. The job is fundamentally different. One of a manager's primary jobs is to hire and fire effectively. Yes, if you become a manager, you will eventually have to fire someone. This is not pleasant, but it is part of the job. Managers also do not get to play with the toys. You are in technology because you enjoy it and are good at it. But good managers are no longer programming or running network gear. Good managers are supervising people who program or run network gear. Managers have to do budgets, performance reviews, and project planning. Some people enjoy this, some people don't. One other advantage of being a manager is it helps you become a more effective engineer in the future. I personally was a manager for several years and then went back to an individual contributor technical lead role. Engineers get stuff done. Because I learned to do budgeting and projects planning as a manager, I was better at getting stuff done once I was an engineer again. I could budget my own projects and pass those budgets on to my manager. The result was my projects tended to have the financial and personnel resources to be successful. Engineers use their technical skill and hard work to get stuff done. It is important they have the ability to learn. College is more about proving you have the ability to learn than learning a specific language or framework. Engineers also have influence. They can recommend a particular course of action. One difference between engineers and managers is authority. Engineers can influence a decision, but managers have authority over a decision. Managers also control budgets. If a project needs money, a manager will need to allocate the money. College undergraduates and technical majors need to take humanities classes. This helps them become well-rounded individuals. But some humanities classes are particularly useful for engineers. In English literature classes, you learn to write essays. Your essays must be at least a certain length to get a good grade. Some professors require a certain number of pages or words per paper. This is wrong. Effective communication is about getting to the point. You should make your point in as few words as possible and stop. Technical writing teaches short, effective communication. Never write a book as an email. Shorter emails are more effective. After writing an email, pretend that someone will pay you $1 for every word you delete without losing the key message. To advance to IC5, you will be expected to give presentations in meetings. You will be expected to be a subject matter expert and to teach others. Teaching something during a brown bag lunch session increases your influence and looks great on your annual performance review. Public speaking is scary to many people. Taking a public speaking course in college will improve your career. If you ever get the opportunity to TA a class, take it. Engineers often argue about the best technical solution. This can lead to deadlock. A class in persuasion or influence can be helpful in improving your ability to communicate your ideas effectively. Learning microeconomics and macroeconomics is useful, but every human needs to budget for their own needs. Getting a job paying over $100,000 a year without any personal finance training is silly. For your own personal benefit, take a personal finance class in college. But beware free personal finance seminars taught by financial advisors. If they are selling you a service, they are not acting in your interest. They are acting in their own interest. There are 4 levels of knowledge: heard of it, read about it, done it, and taught it. The best way to achieve mastery in a topic is to teach it. You do not need to be a senior engineer to teach. Every engineer becomes a subject matter expert on something that other teammates need to know. This could be DNS, a standard equipment configuration, a naming convention, or even a review of key customers. You can teach what you know during an informal brown bag lunch. Writing documentation is also a low-risk way to teach something. I first TA'd a class in 1987. My first head TA said there were 3 rules for teaching: preparation, preparation, and preparation. Go into each class with the plan. Preparing will improve your skill. Trying to explain what you know in a way so that others understand it will improve your skill. Teaching is excellent for your career. Even teaching one 1-hour brown bag lunch will go on your next performance review self-evaluation. Managers call that positive impact to the organization. Teaching goes on your resume. Anyone can claim they understand DNS, but if your resume says you taught a class on DNS, hiring managers will notice. Teaching increases your influence in the organization. Who better to advise regarding the next DNS migration than the person who taught the DNS class? If you are uncomfortable speaking in public, practice. One great organization for practicing is Toastmasters. Toastmasters is a network of clubs who practice public speaking in a friendly, supportive environment. There are Toastmaster clubs in most cities. I highly recommend it. Being nice is part of the job. In IT, it is tempting to be grumpy. IT people get many walk-in requests. People need help. Each person who needs help is an interrupt. It is tempting to be grumpy to discourage walk-ins. This decreases your workload. Some IT people become increasingly grumpy without consciously making the decision to do so. Do not fall into that trap. The workplace is better for everyone when people are happy and friendly. So make a decision to be nice. Help people who need help, or at least be friendly and point them in the right direction. Helping people is, after all, the purpose of IT. In addition to wanting to make the world a better place, I will appeal to your self-interest. Being nice will help your career. Your coworkers today are the people who may vouch for you when you apply for a job in the future, but nobody wants to vouch for the grumpy engineer. Managers also know that friendly people are assets, and consciously or unconsciously, managers will reward positive people over time. Once a year, it will be performance review time. Your first task will be to write your self-evaluation. It is tempting to do it quickly so you can get back to your real work, but that is a mistake. Your self-evaluation is your most important task for the whole year. This is where you take credit for your work for the past 365 days. Plan to spend an entire day writing your self-evaluation. Your manager does not remember all your accomplishments during the year. But guess what? You do not remember everything you did either. Do your research. Review your own email for the past year to remind yourself of your accomplishments. If you do weekly reports, review them. Did you conduct any training? What change requests did you implement? What major outages did you resolve? What important trouble tickets did you resolve? What high visibility customers did you assist? This is all fodder for your self-evaluation. The rules of technical writing still apply. Writing a book will not be effective, but remind your manager of your accomplishments and give your manager sufficient ammunition to justify your raise and promotion. Most large corporations have an individual contributor job level guide which describes the expected level of impact for each level. Find it. Email your HR representative if necessary. Your goal is to work at the next IC level. If you are an IC3, work at the IC4 level. When you write your self-evaluation, frame your accomplishments using that higher level terminology. You do not get promoted to IC4 by working at your current IC3 level. You get promoted to IC4 by working at the IC4 level. Your manager will need to use the higher level terminology to justify your promotion. Make it easy for your manager by using that terminology in your self-evaluation. The review raise process is designed not to be appealable. Your manager will write your self-evaluation, write your review, and determine your compensation change. This will be submitted to the director and HR for approval. By the time your manager presents you with the results, the budget is all allocated and it is too late to change. At this point, the result is out of the manager's hands. This is deliberate. The process is deliberately set up to make arguing against an insufficient raise futile. So if you get an insufficient raise, you have two options: switch jobs or get information which will help you do better next year. Switching jobs is not a decision which should be made in the heat of the moment. So if your manager presents you with an insufficient raise, express your discontent and ask what you need to do to get a better raise next year. The simple act of expressing discontent will be a warning to your manager that they need to give you more money next year to retain you. Asking what you need to do will result in an implied contract between you and your manager. During the year, you can remind your manager that you are doing exactly what they told you to do. Performance reviews should not be a surprise. Your manager should be providing you with both positive and negative feedback throughout the year. It is your manager's job to provide you with feedback. It is your job to accept that feedback and improve your performance. Nobody is perfect. Everybody can improve. If all your feedback from your manager is positive, that may be a warning sign that your manager is avoiding conflict. Positive feedback throughout the year is nice, but it is not money. One difference with the annual performance review is that the manager has a finite raise budget to be allocated to their reports. This is the one time when the manager's feedback must correlate with the finite raise they allocate to you. Hopefully, this feedback will not be a surprise. Regardless of the performance review wording, the end result is money. You either get a good raise or a bad raise. You either get a stock award or you don't. Nice words on your performance review may make you feel good, but do not allow those words to distract you from the result. You either get the raise and possibly the promotion you feel you deserve, or you don't. Do not get angry. In the performance review meeting with your manager, get information that can help you do better in the next year. You can subtly warn your manager that they better come through for you next year to retain you. You can ask about the raise budget percentage to try to determine whether your raise was above or below average. But any decisions about job hopping should be done at home when calm and logical. There are 4 ways to get fired: poor economic conditions, giving notice to go to a sensitive competitor, poor performance, or misconduct. The nice thing about getting fired due to poor economic conditions is it's not your fault. The company needs to lay off 10% of the workforce and you are selected. You might get severance and job search support. You are eligible for unemployment. And if you were asked during an interview why you left your prior job, you can honestly say you were laid off. When switching jobs, it is customary to give at least 2 weeks' notice. But if you give notice to go to a sensitive competitor, your current employer will probably walk you out the door immediately. For example, I knew an engineer at Cisco who gave notice that he was going to work at Juniper. Juniper and Cisco are sensitive competitors. Cisco will not allow a future Juniper employee 1 more minute of access to Cisco's internal data, so the employee was walked out the door. Sometimes you can be surprised who is a sensitive competitor. There was a time when Tesla was recruiting a substantial number of Apple employees. I knew an Apple employee who was working on a critical project and gave notice that she would go to Tesla immediately after the project was completed. That was nice and responsible of her. She was going to finish her project before leaving. But due to the excessive recruiting, Tesla was considered a sensitive competitor at the time. She was walked out the door immediately. The rest of us had to scramble to complete the project successfully. If you have restricted stock units vesting in 10 days, that is a very bad time to give 2 weeks' notice. Usually companies will not be vindictive to fire you for the crime of giving notice, but if you are going to a sensitive competitor, you will be fired as soon as legally possible. It would be a shame if your consideration by giving proper notice resulted in losing $50,000 in stock. And sometimes you can be surprised by which companies are considered sensitive competitors. In California, if a company fires you, they are required to pay you your final paycheck immediately. That means a boss cannot fire you immediately, whatever the provocation. The manager can confiscate your badge, have you escorted off the premises, remove your VPN access, and order you not to enter company property. But the formal termination will have to wait for the next business day while payroll sends your final paycheck by Federal Express. Poor performance can get you fired, but slowly. One technical mistake is usually insufficient. Companies want you to be successful. Everyone makes mistakes. It takes a repeated pattern of technical mistakes to get fired. I personally had a script malfunction and delete the design database for the 233 MHz Pentium 2. An entire building of chip designers were sent home for the day while we restored from backups. That was a bad technical mistake, but it was not a pattern of mistakes. It helps that I was honest about the mistake. I discovered that my script was responsible for the deleted data and told my manager. I even had a log file listing every file that my script deleted. It was embarrassing, but I was not fired. A repeated pattern of failing to accomplish goals can get you put on a performance improvement plan. About half of the people put on a PIP end up getting managed out of the company. It is possible that your poor performance may be due to a poor job fit. If you are a good Java programmer in a C programming role, you may be a poor performer. A transfer to a Java role may resolve the situation, but it is important to do this before you get put on a performance improvement plan. If you are the directly responsible individual for something with high visibility, it is possible that a disaster could get you fired. That is rare, but it does occasionally happen. Sometimes it is good for an organization to hold a DRI accountable. Contractors and probationary employees have a lower threshold for termination. Contractors usually work through a contracting company. As a manager, if a contractor makes a mistake, I can call the contracting company and say, I don't want that individual on my work site anymore. That is far easier than terminating an employee. New employees are usually on probation for about 3 to 6 months. It is easy for a manager to justify not retaining a probationary employee if they are unproductive during that period. Being fired due to poor performance is a slow process. You will be given a verbal warning, then a written warning. Then you will be put on a performance improvement plan with specific but difficult goals. That is when you know the company is serious. At that point, your choices are to improve dramatically and immediately, get out slowly, milking as much salary as you can, or get out quickly without damage to your resume. Companies would prefer you to leave voluntarily. Every involuntary termination risks a lawsuit. Employers win most lawsuits, especially when they follow the correct PIP process, but even if they win, lawsuits are a waste of time and money. The company may offer you several months' salary if you leave voluntarily. This is called a package. I think it is better to leave voluntarily than to get fired. But if you leave voluntarily, you may not be eligible for unemployment. Misconduct can get you fired quickly. A bad technical mistake is poor performance, but lying about it to your manager is misconduct. When you make a mistake, it can be tempting to lie about it. Don't do it. Everyone makes mistakes, but if you lose your manager's trust, you will never regain it. In IT, changes to the production environment must be approved through a process. This is called the change management process. Changing production without approval is a change management violation. That is misconduct. The first occurrence usually results in a written warning. The second occurrence usually gets you fired. Racism, sexual harassment, and violence in the workplace are unacceptable. Don't do it. In addition to being wrong, they will get you fired. I know of one person who was drunk while executing a network change. Not only was the change unsuccessful, he caused some physical damage in the data center. He was fired. Stealing is unacceptable. We work in open cubicles and have expensive network gear in them. We are trusted into our spares closets and equipment warehouses. Thieves can never be trusted and will be fired. On business travel, you are allowed to expense your personal meals. You are allowed to expense business-related meals. A good example of that is if you buy lunch for the local crew helping you. But if you go on a date, you are not allowed to expense your date's meal. That is falsifying an expense report. It is a bad idea to leave a paper trail when committing fraud. Vendors love giving gifts to IT personnel. One persuasion technique is reciprocity. The vendor buys your team baseball tickets, and you feel obligated to be nice to the vendor in return. Your decision to buy $300,000 worth of firewalls from them may be logical, but every bit of influence they can use to get you to make that decision works in their favor. As a result, most corporations have a vendor gift policy. Make sure you know the policy. Obey the policy. Even when complying with the policy, avoid excessive gifts from vendors. I'm personally okay with t-shirts, pens, and food during training, but I never went to a movie or a baseball game on a vendor's dime. At work, assume that your information security team is aware of everything you do on your computer. They definitely know what domain names you look up. They know what websites you connect to, even if the data is encrypted. Do not mine Bitcoin at work. I know 2 excellent programmers who were fired for enabling file sharing services at work. What is change management? A change to an IT environment poses a risk of an outage. A change request requests permission to make a change. It should include who, what, where, when, and why the change is being made. All changes should have a backup planned. Not all changes are successful. It is important for IT engineers to think how they can recover if their change plan fails. Leads or managers review the proposed changes and approve or reject them. Ideally, a change management process is easy. If the process is overly bureaucratic, that encourages engineers to bypass the process to get work done. Some changes will result in outages. Management needs to avoid the temptation to respond to that by complicating the change request process. If changes never resulted in outages, you would not need a process to document and decide whether the risk was warranted. Change management is also about scheduling. Some changes are better to execute at night when impact is minimal. Some changes are better to execute at day when support personnel are available to respond. Management needs to decide and communicate their preference. Engineers tend to focus on making good technical decisions, but the best engineers make good business decisions. Rather than thinking about the optimal technical solution, they think about what solution is best for the company as a whole. For example, let's say there is a product launch next Tuesday. Management imposes a change freeze from Saturday through Tuesday. Consider two possible changes Friday night. The first is upgrading Wi-Fi in one building. That would be fine. That would be very unlikely to impact the product launch 4 days later. But a major network core reimplementation Friday night would be another matter. That is a high-risk change the weekend before a product launch. Networks tend to be less reliable for a while after major changes as kinks are worked out. Major network instability could also impact launch preparations through the weekend. Both changes are technically in compliance with the change policy. Neither violates the change freeze from Saturday through Tuesday. But making a major backbone change Friday night is still a poor business decision. Engineers should be sufficiently aware of their environment to not request such a change. I would expect managers and change management boards to deny high-risk changes of that type that close to a launch event. Only engineers who make good business decisions should be considered for technical lead and manager positions. Don't just follow the rules. Act in the best interests of the company. Two other tools to help you get stuff done are the facilities request and the ergonomics request. Large corporations have a facilities team that can fix physical issues with the office. They usually have their own trouble ticket system. Knowing how to make a facilities request can be the difference between complaining about a water leak and doing something about it. Corporations want people to work without suffering from repetitive stress injuries. Most companies offer an ergonomics class where they teach you the healthiest posture to sit and work. Once you take the class, you can request an ergonomic evaluation of your cubicle. The ergonomics team will reconfigure your work environment just for you. That might include adjusting the desk height, providing ergonomic keyboards and mice, a new chair, or even an adjustable or standing desk. I once had a direct report who wanted a door on her cubicle. Some people have jobs which require a moderate degree of privacy, so cubicle doors are a supported option. My report figured out how to submit a facilities request to install the door. The request would cost several $100s and was routed to me as her manager for approval. I was impressed. I respect employees that learn corporate procedure well enough to get stuff done. I was very sad to have to reject her cubicle door request. If she got the cubicle door, everyone would request one. Approving her door request would have been a poor business decision on my part. In IT, sometimes you will deal with data with specific compliance requirements. Credit card data must be protected according to payment card industry (PCI) standards. Health data and student data must also be protected according to government regulations known as HIPAA and FERPA. Governments declare certain types of data to be personally identifiable information, or PII. Depending on jurisdiction, this could include social security numbers, driver's licenses, addresses, phone numbers, and possibly even email addresses. Compromising any of this data would be an embarrassment to the company. Government regulations may require disclosure if this data is compromised. These standards or regulations also require specific steps to minimize and protect the data. The best way to avoid having data compromised is to not store that data at all. But many corporations consider customer data a valuable asset and try to maximize it rather than minimize it. Shadow IT is when an organization other than IT runs computers in a company. All companies and many departments have their own local support experts. They often set up local servers to serve their teams. Shadow IT is inevitable. A central IT organization is never responsive enough to serve all needs for all departments. but one place to draw the line is with sensitive data with compliance requirements. Shadow IT procedures are impossible to audit to verify they comply with these regulations. Go ahead and have your local experts serve your department, but anytime credit card or personal data is involved, take the effort to get it protected in a secure IT environment. Government compliance regulations are vague, but the nice thing about payment card industry requirements is they are specific. If your department needs to comply with PCI, get a copy of the PCI Data Security Standards document and read it. I've seen many people claim that something must be done because it is a PCI requirement. Anytime someone says that, ask them which requirement. Each requirement has a specific number and description. Even if they are correct and back up their claim with a specific requirement, during your annual PCI audit, it will be helpful to identify that you took a specific action to comply with a specific PCI requirement. Auditors exist to check that your company is obeying compliance requirements. Companies have internal auditors to make sure that each department complies. Companies are required to hire external auditors to verify compliance. Failing an audit is bad. What do auditors want? Two things. First, they want you to comply with each requirement. Second, they want objective evidence that you complied with each requirement so they can put it in their report. Let's take an example. PCI requirement 1.1.2 requires companies to have a network diagram identifying connections to the cardholder data environment. In other words, you need to have a map of the part of the network that stores and processes credit cards. This map must be kept up to date. The auditor wants objective evidence that you met this requirement. In my last job, we kept an internal wiki listing each PCI requirement. We would periodically update our map and post a screenshot of the updated map in the wiki under requirement 1.1.2. When the auditors arrived, the map and timestamp on the wiki was objective evidence that we met the requirement. The auditor might have us log into a couple network devices to verify that the map is up to date. This is exactly like doing homework. PCI is just a list of requirements. You need to perform each task periodically before the auditors arrive. Just like homework, you need to be able to prove to the auditor that you did it. Compliance requirements can also help you get budget for certain projects. PCI requires stateful firewalls in front of the cardholder environment. If you identify credit cards being stored in a network not segmented by a firewall, I guarantee management will approve a project to remediate it. Remediation might mean a new firewall, or it might mean data migration to an already secured area. There are many IT job specialties. If you plan to get a job in IT, you need to decide which type of job is right for you. Unix, Windows, network, information security, web servers, databases, application development, project manager, or even auditor. You could be an internal auditor for a company, or you could get an external auditor position for an accounting firm. But in that case, you might have to wear a suit. Let's switch tracks from the political layer to the financial layer. I will start by talking about corporate finance, and then I will segue to personal finance. Both of these will be useful in your career. I learned an important lesson replacing the network van. It was old and unsafe. We called it the death van. Nobody was injured, but it was obvious that it needed replacement. Unfortunately, whenever someone went to the prior network manager to replace it, money was not in the budget. Consider a purchase requisition to replace the death van. Without money in the budget plan, money would have to be taken from another project to fund its replacement. That would make the manager who failed to predict the need look bad. So a PR was never submitted to replace it. The key to replacing the death van was to make the request during the budget cycle. If the new fiscal year starts in October, that means budgeting for the replacement of the van the prior May. When the new fiscal year rolls around, the money is in budget and the PR is approved. Random complaints to replace the van during the other 11 months out of the year were ineffective. The trick was to know the budget planning cycle and request the replacement during the budget cycle. As an engineer, you may not think about the budget cycle, but an engineer's job is to get stuff done. Knowing when to hit your manager up with budget requests for the next year is valuable information. Ideally, managers would ask their engineers for budget input at the proper time, but in my experience, that rarely happens. There are two types of budget: operational expenditure, or OPEX, and capital expenditure, or CAPEX. CapEx is used to buy large items which become assets to the company. Buying a network switch that costs more than $5,000 is CapEx. Buying a network switch which costs $3,000 is considered a small expenditure and is OPEX. Paying for annual vendor support for a switch is always OPEX. Buying a van outright would be CapEx, but many companies lease vehicles through corporate fleets. Lease payments are OPEX. Employee salaries are usually OPEX. Contractor expenditures could be OPEX for regular operations or might be CapEx if the contractor is implementing a large project that is capitalized. As an engineer, you don't need to worry about the details. Ask your manager or financial administrator. But it is good to know that there are two separate buckets of money. When budgeting a project, you need to estimate CapEx and OPEX separately. Large corporations usually have a travel and training budget item. Training money is usually available because engineers are busy. I suggest you go to at least one conference or training class per year. Your manager will probably be fine with the financial expenditure, but may be reluctant to have an engineer out of the office for a week due to workload. Everyone needs to understand personal finance. I suggest every college student find and take a personal finance course. Personal finance courses should be required high school curriculum. If you did not take such a class, find a book. The most important rule is to spend less than you earn. If you earn $100K and spend $90K, you will be fine. If you earn $100K and spend $110K, you will be miserable. Don't be miserable. Automate your saving. Sign up and max out your 401K for your entire career. I suggest investing in an S&P 500 index fund. Do not panic and sell during downturns. Why would you buy high and sell low? Do not try to time the market. Consistently contributing to an index fund in a 401k plan over a 30-year career will make you a multimillionaire at retirement. Choose where to work carefully. Jobs are plentiful in Silicon Valley, but the housing prices are awful. There are several high-tech clusters in the United States. Companies everywhere need IT engineers and computer programmers. Some people get their first job in Silicon Valley and then relocate to a less expensive region after they get some experience. Think of your college education as an investment. 4 years of college can cost from $100,000 to $300,000. Some majors have good job prospects. Some majors have poor job prospects. Do not waste $200,000 on a major with poor career prospects. Information technology and computer science have good career prospects. That said, do not pursue a career you will hate, regardless of pay. If you hate a career, you will be unsuccessful. You need to find something you enjoy that pays decently to be happy. Doctors are a good example of a career that pays well, but many doctors burn out quickly. That is a shame after the required 10 years of training. Wrap up. You are the DRI for your career. Get work experience before graduation. Understand the do not approach rule. Teach. Be nice. Poor performance is bad, but misconduct is dangerous. Make good business decisions. Pick your preferred IT specialty or pick computer science. Getting stuff done may require planning ahead to get budget. Spend less than you earn. Max out your 401k your entire career. I hope this presentation was useful.